not in the habit, you might get rejected. Yes, you probably will get rejected at some point, right? And so my heart was beating, and we were in this cab ride for 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta say something. We're almost to our destination. So I'm like going the sideways route, not the direct route, because I'm scared. Hey, have you been to church? Hey, what do you think about God? So I find out that his wife just found out she was pregnant one day before, that they used to go to church like 10 years ago, but they haven't been back since. So we're here. We have parked at the place, and I haven't said anything yet. My husband gets out of the car, and he's doing the phone stuff to pay for the trip. And I'm in there, and I'm like, this is my last chance. And everything inside of me is shaking, you know? But I said, hey, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah. And I said, do you have a problem over here with your shoulder, a chronic pain? He said, yes. I was in a car wreck about 20 years ago, and I've had pain there ever since. How did you know that? And I said, well, God told me that He wants to heal you. I said, do you mind if I put my hand on your shoulder? He said, yeah, that's fine. Of course, it's not the shoulder close to me. It's the shoulder far over there. So I start praying for him. And so we're like huddled here. And he's sobbing like a child, okay? So then my husband is like, what is going on? And he looks to God. Here I am, hugging this man who's sobbing. He's like, Shane, what did you do to that man? Oh my gosh. But we prayed for him. I said, does it feel better? He said, yes. I said, it does. He said, we're going back to church this weekend. He said, God must love me if He sends you my way. Okay? So when He asks you to do something, the first few times He makes it easy, right? That was a wonderful, wonderful reception. So I had decided I was going to do this once a week to get practice, because practice makes perfect. So the next time I was at Walmart, which is the grocery store we had, and the cash register lady was there, and I had my 2-year-old at the time. And I was not thinking about any other person but myself. I'm thinking, did I get everything on my list? Make sure my 2-year-old doesn't grab all the candy bars, things like that. And so God said, her. And I'm like, who her, because I'm in my own little world, only thinking about myself. And I look up, and there's a 17-year-old girl working at the cash register. And my first thought is, no way, no teenager wants to know what some middle-aged lady has to say to her. She doesn't care, she's not interested. And God said it in her. And so I start talking to her. And I say, oh, can I pray for you? Da, 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 da. And she's like, yeah, okay. And she doesn't know what to do. She's like, closing her eyes, opening her eyes, putting her hands together, not opening her hands together. She's like, should I ring up your stuff? Should I stop everything? She didn't know what to do. So I prayed for her, and then afterwards she says to me, no one has ever prayed for me in my entire life.
Wow.
She's 17 years old. No one has prayed for her in her entire life. And this is in Texas, man. Everybody's Christian in Texas. Kind of like here, it seems. How could it be that this person has never been prayed for? And I prayed for her that she got favor with her bosses, things like this is what I went through. And she told me that this was her first day of work ever in her life. I thought, man, that's cool. So as I'm leaving the store, she's bye, bye, bye. And I'm like, okay, God, I was totally wrong. You had this divine setup. So the next week happens again. I walk into this little pharmacy, and I'm the only customer. There's one guy working at the counter. I'm like, oh, this must be my opportunity. I'm alone with this person. This is the one. So earlier that day, I had gone with a friend to pray for a man who had been in a very bad car accident. It was horrible. He was in a really horrible coma for a long time. The doctors told his wife that they should unplug him and let him die. And she said, I don't want to do that. After he had been in a coma for 3 weeks, he came out of a coma for like 2 minutes. And he said to his wife, I love you. I love you. I'm still here. And he went back into his coma. So she said, I'm not taking the plug out. We're going to see what happens. But it was brain trauma, right? So brain trauma usually you can't get over very quickly, right? So he did get better, but it was slow, right? So I had gone to see him maybe 9 months after the accident, and he was talking, he was making jokes with me, but he still had a long ways to go. He couldn't use his legs yet, he wasn't using the bathroom by himself, he needed help for that, things like that. So we're just praying full restoration on him. So I'm at CVS at the pharmacy, and I'm alone with this guy. And I think, oh, well, that's what I'll tell him about this great miracle that has happened. So I said, oh, yeah, I had this great time today. I've been praying for this man. He was in a horrible accident. He had a stroke. He was in a coma. But he is being healed. And I thought I was there to witness to this guy. And this guy says to me, yeah, me too. I'm like, what? Yeah, you too? And he starts saying, yeah, 1 year ago, I fell down here in the store. I had a stroke. He was a young guy, a really young guy. They told my wife to pull the plug on me. They told her I was never going to get better. But I had a 2-year-old son. And she was like, I'm not losing the father of this. And so he said, and I remember progressively getting better from it. He said, I remember the first time I came back to work and I couldn't count the change very well, that my mind was fuzzy. He said, but it is then here, and I stand before you fully healed and fully restored. I thought I was there to witness to him. He was there to witness to me. Tell me to keep praying for this other man for the full restoration, right? So those were the first 3. God often makes the grace when you are stepping out in faith easier at first, right? Now when I witness to people, people say, no, I'm not interested. But I don't take it to heart, right? Because I have moved beyond fear, moved beyond being scared of rejection, knowing that if I don't open my mouth, how are they going to know how to get saved? If I don't have the courage to tell them, how will they know? How will they know? Awesome. Okay. So we said that God learned early on that people made of dust are not very good at keeping their part of the covenants. So he made covenants that they can't lose, right? He made the covenant in the sky of the rainbow so the humans can't lose it, right? So God sees his own covenant. He's reminded, oh yes, I need to fulfill my covenant. Then we have the era of the patriarchs, because God is ready to build his nation. And to build his nation, he needs a people group, he needs a common language, he needs a government, and they need a land. And so he says, okay, it's time. I'm ready to build my nation. So he goes to one man and makes a promise to him. And this one man is as good as dead. But God makes the promise to him that I'm going to bless you, and you're going to be a blessing. I'm going to bless all those people who bless you. I'm going to curse all those people who curse you. And Abraham was, for many years, let's see God, having to wait. But God made the covenant with him while he was sleeping. Also another time, right? God knows we're human. We can't keep our part of the covenant. And so he takes care of both parts. He said, this land I've given to you, I'm giving it to you for your forever, for your descendants. He gives them the sign of circumcision. Okay, so the rainbow was one covenant you can't lose. Circumcision is another one you can't lose. Once it's done, it's there, right? Forever. You're not going to lose it. So then Abraham is told to sacrifice his son, and it is like the friendship of God. It's showing what God's going to go through with his own son. And we see that God says that he shall provide. He will provide the land. He will provide the land. He will provide the ram. He will provide the offering that is needed. So he made this promise to one man, Abraham, and Abraham eventually has kids. And then his kids eventually have kids. You know that 3 sets of them were barren? All the women were barren. What kind of family was God choosing? You know, they had to wait for a long time for their kids. Abraham had to wait for 25 years. Yes. Isaac had to wait for 18 years. never went to Egypt. He never went to the land of sin. He spent his time honoring his dad. He went around and all the wells that the Philistines had filled up with dirt that his father had dug, he redug the wells, right? So people before you have done hard spiritual work. They've already prepared deep ways into the soil to tap into water sources. Okay? You don't always have to make a fresh well. You can use the well of your fathers. Use the well of your pastor. You can use the well for the living waters for yourself. You can redig wells that have already been there. So I'm from a city called Spokane, and we had Native Americans, Indians that used to live there a really long time ago, and they said that it was a place with healing waters. Okay, so there's something already in a space, in a geographic location. God has done things in different geographic locations, right? So then this man of God comes to town, and he says, yes, there's something about healing going on in this place. And so he started the healing rooms, and he has, when you go in there, you can see the newspaper article where it says there are no patients in the hospital.
Wow.
The hospital has gone bankrupt
In
our city because he went around to the hospital every day to just lay hands on everybody that was there.
Wow.
He said there is a spring, there is some water that is in this geographic location of healing. It's here. I just need to bring it back up. Okay? So think about your parents. What wells do they already dig that make your life and your spiritual depth easier to get to? For my mom, it's grace. She was born into a Mormon church. When she left the Mormon church, she was excommunicated, right? Her family was like, no way! We're pushing you out, we're pushing you aside. And so my mom, because she had been raised in the Mormon church where everything is about good works, right? They check your good works. They want you to give them how much you were paid, and then they make sure that you're tithing. If they don't line up, someone shows up at your house and says, are you tithing the right amount? We can see how much you're getting paid. They want you to give them that information. It's kind of amazing. Everything is built on these good works that you're doing all the time. So when she got saved, she went radically to the other side. She never worried about works ever again, just because she was so filled with God. She was full on the grace side. She understood it wasn't about us, it's all about Him anyway, right? So that is an easier area for me. It's easier for me. I don't necessarily fall into works as easy as some people, because she's already paved a way for me. She's made it easier for me. So there was this woman, and she went out on a walk in the neighborhood, and they were mowing the lawn at the neighbor's house. You guys have lawnmowers? Yes. Okay, so the guy at the house was making a circle in his lawn. He wasn't going back and forth, making lines or anything. He was making a circle and he did it again and again and again in one area. And she was like, what are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm making a track for my kids. They have their little bikes and little scooters, and I want it to be easy for them to pedal around in this little circle for them. He said, I'm making it easier for them. You are making it easier for your children too. Your children from your body and your spiritual children. Make it easy for them. Help them grow up, right? Make the track for them. It's good to do. Okay, then we come on to Jacob. You know, and Jacob is such a wild character in the Bible. I just don't even know what to think about him. He was such a deceiver. He was always trying to make his own way, right? And then he ends up with Laban. And Laban is just as much of a deceiver as he is, you know? It's like he finally met his match. God put him in the situation. It's like, okay, let's have it out. Who can deceive the other one more, right? That's a good way to get something out of you, right? And so they're having all these kids, and finally we're getting into like tribes, and God is working to Egypt, that he's sent ahead, like we said yesterday, and it's such a picture of Christ going down into the slave market, going there beforehand to prepare the way for life for many, right? Yeah. And he saved the nation. He saved all these people's lives, just like Jesus did. So his family ends up coming down. And when they come down, there's only 70 of them, right? And then there's, 400 years of slavery. So in this 400 years of slavery, God is building his people group, right? They're all stuck in one location. All they're doing is slave work all day and home at night. So they're making lots of bricks and lots of babies, right? So after 400 years, this group of 70 people, we see when they leave Egypt, is 600,000 men. It doesn't say how many women or how many children. But if we say that there's one woman for every man, that's 1.2 million. If they say that the average would be one child for one man and one woman, that's 1.8 million people. Yeah. That's a lot of people. That's God's people group, right? So when God is ready to bless, he sends a baby. Have you noticed that in history? Yeah. When he's ready to bless you, he's going to send a little baby to come on the scene. And so the blessing that he's going to send is Moses. And this little baby is born. And Moses' name is really cool. It means drawn up from the water. Okay? And why it is so cool is because the Nile was why life happened there. All of life could happen because there was a water supply. In Israel, it's desert, right? If it doesn't rain, there's no extra water. The water around it is salty, right? But the Nile had fresh water. So because there was fresh water, they could have crops. Because there was fresh water, they could have animals. Because there was fresh water, all of these things of life could happen, right? And so they worshiped everything that came from the river. They worshiped the river. They worshiped the frogs that came from the river. They worshiped the water that fed the cows. So they worshiped the cows. They worshiped everything having to do with the river. And here comes a little baby sent on the river. And when she picks him up and says, he's drawn out of the Nile, to them an ancient Egyptian, it means like son of the gods. Okay, so here is this one that God has sent that is going to be like God to Pharaoh, right? That's what he promises him. And all of the Hebrew people are in slavery, but Moses is being prepared. He's 40 years in Pharaoh's household. I also think it's so ironic, right, that everyone was trying to kill the babies then. Do you remember that? Yeah. They're killing all the babies, so they had to hide little baby Moses. They put him on the river, and Pharaoh's daughter finds him and adopts him, and Moses' mom gets to raise her own son while all the other ones are getting killed. She gets to raise her own son. She gets paid for it. She doesn't have to make any more bricks, She gets to spend time with her son. God can do such cool, miraculous things in the middle of something that looks like death to all, right? He can do this super cool stuff. So Moses is being raised in the best education of the day, right? Everyone else is out there slaves. Are they getting any education? No. Oh. Are they learning about government, history, philosophy, all these leadership, how to do war, blah, 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 blah? No, he is. He's learning everything. He is put in Pharaoh's house. He can see how Pharaoh does things. He can see what a ruler looks like, acts like, speaks like. He is seeing this day in and day out. And we know that he has a little problem. He sees the Hebrews being beaten on, and so he murders one of the Egyptians, and he is out of the timing of God, right? The calling was there. It was there inside of him. That he knew he was supposed to help his Hebrew brothers. But he didn't know how, he didn't know when, and when he tried to do it, the timing was off. And so he has to go out into the desert. But being in the wilderness is a good thing because we know eventually he's going to be out there for 40 years with a bunch of millions of people, right? If he didn't have any time in the wilderness, he wouldn't know how to find water, how to stay away from the scorpions, how to stay away from the snakes, how to find something to eat. All of these things that he learned in his time in the wilderness. I am sure, though, that when he was fleeing from Egypt and went to the wilderness, he probably think his calling was over. Yeah. Can you imagine? I'm in defeat. I'm out here in the wilderness. I got nothing. I'm nobody. He's probably pretty upset for a while. And he's probably like, well, I guess I'm just supposed to live some average life. I thought I was going to do something to help the Hebrews, but here I am living this average life. But we know that for the last 40 years of his life, he was leading the Israelites. It's kind of cool that it's very sectioned off. 40 years in Pharaoh's house, 40 years in the wilderness, 40 years leading the people of God. How many of you want your calling when you're 80? And I hope it doesn't take that long, right? My in-laws were the ones that started the ice cream company for our family. They started it the year they retired from their job. They had worked in the dairy industry their whole life, in middle management, doing dairy things, and then after they retired, they had this idea, and now it's so big, right? You don't know when it's going to happen to you. Hopefully it's before you're 80, though. Okay. So another one of these fuzzy signs, right? Okay, so in the Old Testament, there's types of Jesus, and then Jesus comes and fulfills those types, and he's called an antitype. Okay, so there's people that are types of Jesus. Jesus is the antitype of Moses, he's a type of Jesus, he's a prophet, he's a leader, and then Jesus comes and fulfills that. But there's also instances, like the bronze serpent is a type of redemption, and Jesus fulfills it